Hello, I'm Jay Biershank. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today you're joining me here in Hunenberg, Switzerland, in farmland. I'm on a walk near my girlfriend's parents' house. And today we're going to do a walking and talking book review. I hope that that's not too distracting, and I hope the audio is okay. We don't have any wind on this cool, foggy day, so it should be fine. It's quite cold outside, and I'm enjoying my walk, so I figured we can do two things at once. I finished this book about a month ago now, and I've been waiting to review it because actually I wanted to get back to reviewing books in beautiful places. I've been reviewing books inside of homes, which can also be beautiful, but some of my older videos I really enjoyed because I look back at them and I see them in all these different beautiful places in all these different countries, and it's so interesting. So now we get some farmland here in Switzerland. Anyway, today we're going to be going over a book that has inspired lots of people and has even converted and raised the collective interest in Buddhism, I think, greatly. And that book is The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying by Sogyal Rinpoche. So for me, I really enjoyed this book. It's quite long, and I honestly had a bit of a hard time in the beginning to get in the rhythm and get in the flow of it. My soul lately is really yearning for some good novels, but lately I've been reading some short stories by Dostoevsky and have been soothing that itch. But regardless, it was hard for me to initially get into the book. But after maybe 100 pages, I was then engrossed in the information and in the overall story that it is and the point of view that it comes from. And so some main points. I'm not sure how I'll do this review because, I also noticed lately that I really enjoy to review novels, because with the novels I can completely just spin off and riff off of my own interpretation of the novel. But when I do a book like this, it's a bit more challenging for me. But anyway, I will still go off. So in the beginning, it really talks about if in the West we have such a fear and aversion to dying and talking about death. Nobody wants to die, and everybody wants to do everything they can to extend their life and to, run from death. And this constant aversion to death and to dying, he says, is also this constant aversion and inability to truly live. If you're afraid of death, you can never truly be, living and here present. And I think that that's a really great idea. This attachment to life and this aversion to death are two ends of the spectrum. Within the middle is presence. And so I think that that's a really beautiful idea. And that's what a lot of the beginning of the book is talking about. And I really enjoyed that. Also, this book I think is extremely valuable for anybody interested in a little bit of learning about the Tibetan Buddhist way of thinking and the way of seeing the world. I learned quite a lot. One of the main things that I thought was so interesting was the idea of the Bardos. So the Bardos are the different states of life that humans go through, basically, once this kind of collective energy that they can call God, or they can call Buddhism, or they can call the animating spirit, or things like this, once they're put into a human body. Hello, Grüezi. Grüezi. So the Bardos was quite an interesting part that I had really never heard of in terms of Buddhism. And that's basically, so the beginning is, I believe, so you have the Bardo of life, which is the Bardo that we are in these human bodies. Then we have the Bardo of dying, which is a part of life that is ending and then becoming into pure spirit again. And then we have the Bardo of Dharmata, which is after the human death, and then once the spirit is kind of reconnected to source. And then we have the Bardo of becoming, which is now the spirit has gone through this process of reconnecting to source, and now it's beginning to form into an identity that is kind of based on its karma. So as you can see, like when I review a book like this, it's so much different than reviewing a novel because it's so concrete. But anyway, that was a really interesting concept. Also learning so much more about karma. Sorry, my hands getting tired. Learning so much more about karma, and obviously we've all heard of karma, but getting such an in-depth view of it through the Tibetan Buddhist perspective is super interesting. And also, I have to give major kudos to the writer. He does an amazing job of exploring these really pretty deep esoteric concepts and explaining them in such a clear, concise, beautiful way. So I have to say I'm quite impressed. Wow, my hands are freezing. Had to put my glove back on. So another really, really beautiful thing, and I would say probably the most beautiful thing that's displayed in this book and taught in this book, is how to grieve and to care for the dead and the dying. I would say if you're grieving, this is probably the best possible book for you to read, because it gives you such a purposeful way to mourn, prayers and meditations and acts that you can do for the dead person's soul in this Dharmata phase, or this Dharmata Bardo. And I think that for so many people, they feel so helpless when it comes to being able to do something or to connect with a dead relative or a dead lover or a dead person in general. And there are so many practical things that you can do that are talked about in this book for that. And also, I absolutely love the way that he says to have bedside manner, if you will, or the way he says that you should interact with someone who is dying to allow them to die much more peacefully. That is indispensable knowledge, I think. And what is most beautiful about that part and those teachings, especially with the bedside manner, is it's so much about being able to be present, and for you to be centered and calm and present, so that you are making the dead person as comfortable as they possibly can be to completely open up in that vulnerable state of dying. And I really liked how he talked about this at one part of the book. We talked about dying, is it's like that person is on the verge of losing everything that their ego is. They're losing their identity, they're losing everything. So obviously, I mean, that's an obvious thing to say, but I think it's so interesting to think about that, like being aware that there is this afterlife and there is this bardo and there is this ever, present cosmic energy that is space and time and all of it combined, but then also being aware that this person is human and they have an ego, and that ego is losing everything. So I think that's a beautiful way to think about the vulnerability of someone who's dying. So I really, really like that. And also there's a lot in here about basically about presence and about meditation. And I love the way in which he describes presence. He says that presence and enlightenment is the time between thoughts. So when you're in meditation, thoughts will arise. And an enlightened master is able to prolong the moments between thoughts. And that is pure presence, and that is enlightenment. I think that that's so beautiful. And, there are so many ways and perspectives out there of how to think about the ego and how to integrate the mind and the ego, and is it chaos, is it blah 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 blah. And I think that the more perspectives that you can get on that, the better, even though it's a really interesting, big, elusive concept to think about. Like, how do we have a healthy relationship with the ego? What exactly is our ego? What exactly is our identity? What exactly does it do for us? Is it a societal construct? But like, what is it? And I think that from this enlightened Buddhist perspective, it was great to hear about and great to see. Also, one of the greatest ways, he said, for cultivating presence and cultivating your spiritual practice is through guru yoga. And this is basically a meditation that involves visualizing, in the most intense sense of the word, visualizing an enlightened master of yours, whether that's a current teacher or whether that's a enlightened master of the past or Jesus or Muhammad or whoever you deem to be truly enlightened, and you meditate and you envision this person, and then you connect your consciousness basically with them and have them completely merge with you. And he was saying this is really without comparison the greatest form of any kind of spiritual meditation or yoga, which I thought was interesting. Also, he talks about how the importance of having a teacher and the importance of having the student-teacher relationship when it comes to your spiritual journey. And I think that that's quite interesting. And he also talked about how in the West there is an aversion to having a teacher and being a student. And he said something really clearly, that no enlightened master in history has ever became enlightened by themselves. And he really stresses that without a teacher, in a lot of ways what you're doing is, what's the best way to say it? Causing more illusion for yourself by endeavoring on a spiritual path alone without a master to direct you. You're only creating more illusions around the idea that you're vanishing illusions, which obviously is an interesting and whole topic to try to understand and play with and open up on your own. It was interesting for me for sure, because I'm someone that wants to be more present in my life and wants to be connected to something that is ever present and ever giving, and I don't have a teacher, and I've never had a I've never had that student-teacher relationship for any amount of time over a week or two. So anyway, it was very interesting. But okay, all in all, I would definitely recommend this book, especially to someone who is interested in any form of Buddhism, especially to someone that is grieving or spends time working in care for people who are dying or people who are grieving. It's indispensable in that sense. I would also recommend it to anyone who's interested in meditation, anyone who's interested in spirituality. I think it's absolutely indispensable there. His descriptions of enlightenment, of these spiritual states, there's a lot of talk about, in this Bardo of Dharmata, what is going on there. And this is the Bardo in which you enter after death, which is basically like source. And, that in and of itself, just reading about that could be extremely interesting to someone who has never thought about that or has never had any way to kind of conceptualize this returning to the light or something like that after death. So wildly interesting. Also, yeah, I think that's going to probably do this review. I talked quite a lot. I hope I covered the things that are most important. But some key takeaways is really this aversion to death and manic attachment to life is the biggest thing that is impeding you from your own presence. I think that's beautiful. So yeah, that's my review, I believe. The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying by Sogyal Rinpoche. I'm trying to think if there's anything huge that I'd like to cover again, and I don't think so. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you made it this far, then I appreciate you, and don't forget to leave me a like and subscribe. Take it easy. Stay in the light, stay in the love, stay intentional. Peace.